Luke Skywalker dies in George Lucas's Star Wars sequel trilogy treatment. Yes, it's true. You heard it here and like everywhere else because it just came out this week. Star Wars Fascinating Facts, Story, Lore, and History from the Greatest Galaxy by Pablo Hidalgo is the new book on the block, igniting this conversation. He reveals inside the book Luke Skywalker's destiny, which was written years before production began on episode 8. It confirms George Lucas had Luke Skywalker die in the middle chapter of his sequel trilogy Story 2, which is highly controversial because when he died in The Last Jedi, everyone said, well, but George would have kept him alive forever. And I think I actually, to be fair, I probably was one of those people.
Did you say it like that?
I probably did. I'm not gonna lie about it. I wasn't too happy when it happened. My dad, we're in the theater. There's 6 people, and it's he and I, and in the row, it's like a mom, dad, and like a 7-year-old. Luke dies. My dad just out loud, that's bullshit. And I was just like, you cannot do that in public. He's like, well, I paid money. And anyways, that's why we won't let Dave on the show. But hey, here's my first question for you guys. When you think about the fact that George also had Luke go in his 8th chapter, what do you think the difference is between that Luke Skywalker and the Luke Skywalker we got to know in The Last Jedi are? Arzu, I'm sorry. I'll start with you. What do you think those differences are between the George Lucas Luke Skywalker and the Luke we met in Rian Johnson's film?
So I think Luke was always going to feel a bit different, however George wrote him, just because he's his. So he's got his own sentimental attachment to it. But I am going to get yelled at for this. I really like Luke's arc in The Last Jedi. I think it makes sense for the setup they gave him. I think that, that it's nice to, not nice, but like it's compelling to see, the hopeful, sweet farm boy who took on the mantle of this impossibly large legacy. And then it's just crushing him. And then he fails in the worst possible way, fails his own family. And then in that last moment, finds peace and purpose and sort of brings it full circle, and then in a peaceful way passes into the Force. So like when he died at the end of The Last Jedi, I wasn't surprised, but I was surprised, but I wasn't shaken. I was like, that makes sense. I am happy that you went in such a peaceful way. I like the justification in the book too, that to keep Luke around for for George's potential 3rd trilogy was that if you keep Luke around, he's going to overshadow everybody else. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes his story all over again. And I think the point was if you're going to make another trilogy, to make it about the new people. So that was, I guess, the rationale behind killing Luke in the middle chapter. So it made sense to me then, and it makes sense to me for the way it played out.
I really like that, but I will admit I had a hard time accepting that. But I think the point that you made is right. Luke will overshadow that entire trilogy of films. But Pete, I really wanted to see more of Luke. I guess my thing though too is, when I think about Luke Skywalker, either role that he had, it also seemed that both George and Ryan kind of viewed Luke the same, in isolation on an island, having to kind of be saved by this next generation of Force user, next generation of Jedi. Mm-hmm. How does this land with you when you learn that it's a little bit more aligned with what we got in The Last Jedi than what we maybe thought a few months ago?
I think part of much like Arzu, I'm a fan of The Last Jedi. I thought it was I enjoyed that movie a lot. So honestly, it's funny that this is even becoming a conversation on Twitter. I think it's in social media. I think it's kind of a non-issue in that. Okay, so George was going to have Luke die. You can't if you think about it, you can't tell a story of somebody's life without telling how they die. So they're going to die in the film. I think what's interesting, I just for next week's episode of Around the Galaxy, I have Mike Chen, who wrote a story for From a Certain Point of View, Empire Strikes Back, and he made an interesting observation that I never thought about before, and I think it's appropriate here. And he said that he enjoyed the sequels. And you can hear the full interview next week. But one of the things he said was if they had opted not to name them 7, 8, and 9, it might have been easier for us to manage those stories or accept those stories simply because they've the legacy it has to carry is so big. That being said, the fact that George was going to kill off Luke and Ryan killed off Luke, I think I honestly I think this is the biggest non-story of Twitter whining that I've seen in a while. So there I am.
Well, that's no, and that's valid too. Here's my thing. I think that the one thing that we don't know with all this is how did Luke die in that treatment compared to what happened with the Last Jedi. I don't know. We can all kind of fantasize. I'm personally someone who kind of felt like, listen, some of us spent 40 years wanting to know what happened next. I would have liked to see a little bit more of like Luke Jedi Master Prime and then die. But as far as like Luke coming back to face Kylo, that exchange, the moment with Carrie, and then him ultimately passing into the Force, I thought was incredibly well done. And that is something that I'll never take away from this Last Jedi or the sequel trilogy. Like I was there for that. I wasn't a big fan of Grumpy Luke, but it's very well known. It kind of reminds me of Pete, honestly, but it's also well documented that was going to be something similar to what George was concocting himself. This lost Luke and having to be saved, whether it's what was it, Kira was going to be, or whatever character Rey ultimately became.
All the various names that they had.
Right.
Her, yeah.
But
Winky's my favorite.
Winky,
I think it's cool. I don't know about you guys, but would you ever want to read the treatments? I mean, for me, I would. It kind of gets into dangerous territory, right? When the Colin Trevorrow script leaked several months ago, and people kind of went wild about that. But I don't know. It'd be kind of curious because, to your point, Arzu, it's like I want to know what George wrote, because how he writes those characters is just going to innately be different because, well, that's kind of the narrative. He's been the storyteller with a lot of those characters for so long. I don't know. I'd like it, but I could see how it could become really catastrophic.
I would have said that I'd like to see them prior to the Duel of the Fates script coming out. But then when that came out, the conversation online is sort of treating that and The Rise of Skywalker as like the same thing.
Yep.
And it's like, well, this one, I'm like, but that's not real. That's a script that got a man fired. So how much do we want? Like, I don't know if the script, I don't know. But like, that's a script that ultimately decided. Breaking news. No, that's the script that they ultimately decided not to make.
Right.
So,
well, I what I would add to that, Arzu, and I think you're right. We all love the what could have been, right? I mean, we all love reading the things about what the Star Killer and the original versions of the Star Wars saga, but nobody says we were robbed because Luke Skywalker should have been named Star Killer and he should have been a 50-year-old man, and all the things that were part of the original. The problem is we live in a world now where people will say we were robbed. This is what we should have gotten. I've read the Trevorrow script, and I love it as a piece of history, and I love pieces of it. And frankly, it's a better story. But the whole thing, I never once will say we were robbed. We didn't get what we deserved. And so I think I would love to see what George had in mind. Because there'd probably be parts of it that would be fantastic and parts that we wouldn't care about. But the problem is if they did say what George wanted to do, Twitter would be flooded with "we were robbed. This is what we should have gotten," and that's not the case. Stories evolve, stories change. I think people need to realize that Star Wars is a fictional universe about space wizards and empires and starships, and because it is a story much like Game of Thrones and X-Files and Avengers and all that stuff, and those stories change as they're being written. There is no set law. And on set, I mean, the greatest Star Wars line was written on set by Harrison Ford, the "I love you, I know," right? So that was not George's vision. That was not part of the script. Were we robbed by Harrison Ford not saying, "Well, you better wait for me"? No, we got something
that would have been awful
and better.
I'm glad you weren't writing Empire Strikes Back.
No, that was the original line.
Oh, that was what the. Oh, jeez, I thought it was just like "I love you too."
Yeah,
but Jesus.
But so we need social media needs to just chill the hell out and be like, "Oh, that's interesting. That would have been cool." but this is what we got, and this is our story, and this is what we'll live with.
Yeah, I don't want to. I'm never going to base an opinion of mine off of social media because on it, I just don't, I don't even care about them. I will say this: what is pretty cool is they took George Lucas's original treatment for the original trilogy and made that a comic book,
which was fun.
And I think that was really fun. And I would not be opposed to them doing that again with these treatments. Not canon, just an Elseworlds kind of thing. I think it's a cool way to do the what if. And that's just me. But you know what, though? If we never see the treatments, that's fine. I personally would like to see it. We want to know what you think. Would you like to see George Lucas's treatments? Do you like learning these little tidbits? Oh, over the course of time, Pablo Hidalgo revealing that, Luke Skywalker died in Lucas's episode 8 too. Let us know down in the comments below, or if you're watching on the Rewind, listening on the Rewind, you can always hit us up on Twitter at BTBD Star Wars.
Thank you for watching Beyond the Blast Doors. Be sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget, give us a thumbs up and leave a comment. Beyond the Blast Doors, a Star Wars conversation.